So, yeah, I'm Krzysztof, and I'm like IT engineer by education, and I am a strategy consultant by experience. I spent most of my professional life working for Ernst & Young and Boston Consulting Group and advising critical infrastructure companies, power and utilities, transportation, water. So basically, right now I lead like a team of OT security focused people. They are like security architects, researchers, penetration testers, OT operators, and let's say security solutions implementers. And starting in 2018, we initiated our research project focused on smart metering and advanced metering infrastructure. Back then, the reason was that we wanted to kind of shake the security awareness of power and utilities, electrical energy distribution companies, showing them the potential of and the cyber threat and potential of vulnerabilities for smart meters. Back then, not many companies, not many organizations considered like thorough testing, security testing of smart meters and advanced metering infrastructure. And since 2018, the overall awareness rose, and we have conducted a bunch of projects focused on analyzing and assessing security of advanced metering infrastructure installations, but also enhancing the overall security posture of those. And I'm here to share some findings with you. Basically, to entertain you a little and maybe to encourage some more people to join the session, a little bit about my background out of work. So there's a show, American Ninja Warrior. This is like American franchise, which started like 14 or 15 years ago in US. It's broadcasted in nationwide TV, NBC, and for 4 years already, there's been a franchise spin-off in Poland called Ninja Warrior Poland. And this is a funny story because I used to work like 14, 16 hours a day in a corporation and basically spent most of my time behind the desk. So when I got to know about Ninja Warrior, I was like very enthusiastic about it, and but didn't have much opportunity to participate in the show. But I decided to approach the goal of participating in the show in like IT project way. So I defined the goal, I specified the overall process for achieving the goal and the criteria to fulfill. I divided this in particular time periods, and the result was that I managed to be in the show 2 times. And I was really happy with my performance, considering the fact that I wasn't able to do like 3 pull-ups in 2016 and managed to do like 20 of them in 2021. I was like really happy with overall results, and I kind of recommend you this kind of out-of-work activity, you know, just to clear your head and energize yourself. So yeah, getting back to the topic of presentation, smart metering. Why smart metering? Let's start with some offensive, maybe motivation. In 2018, some regional DSOs in Eastern Germany and Western Poland started experiencing local blackouts. Basically, considering the fact that there wasn't like unusual natural conditions, there wasn't like a natural disaster accounted for. The hypothesis around the security community rose that probably that might be something related to the cybersecurity terrorism act. Initial analysis of events indicated that there was like extreme fluctuations in the energy demand in certain regions operated by those DSOs. The secondary analysis indicated that subpopulation of energy consumers across the geography dropped their consumption in like coordinated way. So the final conclusion from the forensic, from the postmortem for the event indicated that there was unauthorized disconnect command initiated and sent to the population of smart meters. Along the way, there's been some indications by the customers, consumers, indicating that there's some operational problems with the smart meters. So this is like a fictitious incident. It has been described by Mark Ellsberg, Austrian novelist, in a Blackout novel released in German in 2012. So, but it basically inspires thinking whether this is possible, whether like smart meters induced blackout, is it possible somehow? Is the scenario like just a fiction, a literary fiction, or is it possible? So the simple answer is that yes, this is possible. In 2020, there was offensive operation targeted a North American-based utility and led to blackout via smart meter misuse. How did it go about? So there was like 9-step overall attack process, which started with getting access and getting hold of an initial access to the IT network by the attackers via phishing campaign, including malware and some kind of COBOL strike implant delivered in one of the files. Next, using quite popular tools like Mimikatz, LDAP search, Powersploit, they managed to elevate their privileges to the domain administration in IT part of the company. Then using their domain administration credentials, they managed to conduct like the reconnaissance of the IT network and identify targets of interest. And then using Microsoft System Center Configuration Manager, they managed to distribute and establish command and control capability on a bunch of workstations in the IT network for preselected user groups like network management, firewall configuration, control engineering, and smart meters operation. Then, getting further with the attack, they managed to come by with a bunch of useful information from those workstations. Using a keystroke capture, they managed to extract the RDP connection credentials for the OT network. They also managed to get a hold of backup for the OT firewall configuration. They came across also the clear text stored credentials for the HES, Head and System Management Console, but with the view-only credentials. They also managed to get hold of the AMI installation documentation, configuration documentation. Next, what they did, basically they tried to use those RDP remote connection credentials to the OT network to get access to the OT network, but they failed because the MFA was configured, fortunately, and quite surprisingly, from my point of view, for this kind of connection. But then they analyzed the OT firewall configuration backup files and identified the communication path between IT network and the patch management server and the DMZ between IT and OT. They got hold of the patch management server and managed to exploit the vulnerabilities on it, and using this as like let's say a pivot point to the OT domain controller. Then they leveraged the access to the OT domain controller and extracted the HES console management password credentials, but this time with the operational and executional capabilities. They used those credentials basically to switch off a population of the smart meters, so game over, simply. Fortunately, that was offensive operation conducted by Mandiant, and basically ordered by the North American utility. But the fact is that technically this is possible. When we researched the topic, we didn't come across documented incident of actual blackout incident induced by the misuse of smart meters, but the history and this kind of exercise proves that this is possible, technically possible. The only thing is that probably we were just lucky. It didn't appear so far, or maybe basically didn't get to the hold to the information about the actual event. Yeah, why talk about it now? There's been a common push for the electric grid efficiency across EU, not only, but this is scope of our interest. And to manage grid efficiently, you need to get access to quite granular and up-to-date data about consumption and production of the energy by prosumers. So basically, EU has released directive which obligates the member states to replace their meters and install smart meters in at least 80% of population of consumers. Considering there's one condition related to the positive business case for that, but basically I don't know the case in which the DSOs don't follow this this directive. And when analyzing the scope of impact on the overall environment, you need to keep in mind that this means there will be actually the market size for the smart meters across EU is estimated at 200 million devices. So considering the fact that there were like intermediary devices, there's like communication layer, it's quite complex environment and infrastructure from the point of view of defenders. So it might be quite complex, quite a lot, a number of moving parts. So it's quite complex exercise to protect it. So it's like a wonderland from the point of view of potential adversaries, right? So we have also researched how others do that. So Switzerland is even more ambitious about the plans because they prescribe that by 2027, 80% of smart meters not only used at the consumers, retail consumer side, but also in the power plants, in the substations should be, and in the commercial installations should be using smart meters. But they go a step further because they define their ambition that and prescribe that only smart meters which are security tested and proven, somehow certified, can be installed and actually sold in the Swiss market. So they have a freedom of interpretation of the EU law. So they kind of pick some interesting stuff, but they also try to refine it, and this is the case. So they have, So what is the challenge from the point of view of cybersecurity for securing this environment? So first of all, based on our research, something that comes up very often is basically questionable security of smart meter devices, per se, resulting from various quality of the code, of the firmware, but also the design of the devices themselves. Replicating secrets used to protect and secure smart meters and communications with them is the second part. I will explain why, what is the reason for that. Insufficient network segmentation and protection, and also late or limited, basically, security department involvement in the project. I say basically because this is quite surprising from our point of view. That this basically is like a founding reason for the remaining three, but very important. Yeah. So how Swiss go about securing and basically increasing the security level for the smart meters. They have basically designed a law to enforce that. So first of all, there's the legislation enforcing that the security, that only security certified smart meters can be sold in Swiss market. This is one. The other one is that the industry community, so there's like association of companies related to smart grid, either on the side of the DSOs and the grid operators, but also on the side of the manufacturers of the equipment used for the grid. It's called SwissMeg. So they have designed, as like a community effort, they have designed security testing standard for smart meters. So they have described the minimum security requirements for the smart meters, but they also describe the procedure on how to test it. So the other one is basically the legislation released by government assumes that there's like freedom of like whom should certify or basically whom should test, security test the devices, but it needs to be accredited testing lab. It's not that difficult to get accreditation. The process is not that formal, so basically this is quite open environment, but they assume that the actual formal certification, which has like the government-backed meaning and significance, is to be released by the federal agency with security certification authority. So it's called METAS, actually. So it's quite interesting ecosystem, and it shows that you can go about actually defining the requirements to refurbish and basically introduce new technology in the grid along with the security requirements in mind. Yeah, so is this certification enough? One might ask. I mean, if you buy Swiss certified smart meter, is it enough from the point of view of making sure that you cover all your risks? The simple answer is no. Why? In one of the exercises that we have conducted, we analyzed security of one of the quite popular implementations of the DLMS COSM communication protocol. It's called GURUX. Basically, it's quite often OEM'd by the smart meter manufacturing companies. And we were able to identify three critical vulnerabilities over let's say, simple 2-week exercise when we tested the security of the implementation. So considering the fact that frameworks like, for example, common criteria for security profile for smart meters, but also requirements like the ones defined by the SwissMeg. They define requirements, they don't prescribe the testing methodology and testing procedures, so they don't give you like assurance that the meters tested according to the testing methodology will be tested the same way and the same kind of vulnerabilities will be revealed. So what we find useful is basically prescribing and designing testing scope and the testing approach and basically ordering the testing according to the risk level and the threat modus specific to the particular organization on the type of organization. And this gives you assurance that the testing will actually reflect the threat and the capabilities that can be used by the adversaries that would approach smart meters that you want to buy or already maintain and use. Yeah. The other example of quite popular vulnerability, in this case misconfiguration, is basically storing sensitive data in non-volatile memories without protection. Here you see the example of storing APN name and access data, but also the LMS association keys and association cryptographic keys and the non-volatile memory of the smart meter. In many cases, there's some other popular misconfiguration in place, which is basically not protecting your SIM card, which is used for communication with the meter, remote communication, not protecting with the PIN. So basically, when you extract the smart meter from the wall, you extract the SIM card, you extract this kind of information from the meter memory. Of course, you need to be quite capable adversary, but this is possible. You are able to get access to DSO network, at this segment of it. So once again, testing and defining testing scope and testing approach suitable to the certain architecture of advanced metering infrastructure environment is the key. Yeah, managing secrets. The LMS prescribes in the low-level security profile, defines the obligation to use 4 different association passwords per meter and use a set of 4 different association cryptographic keys to establish and authorize communication between HES and the meter. So when considering from the point of view of scale, when you consider, let's say, small size city of like 30,000 meters population in the city, you end up with something like 500,000 of secrets to manage. So quite complex challenge to manage the secrets, considering even that you need to have, according to the security profile specification in the LMS, you need to store the history and change the keys at least once a year from the point of view of the LMS. Considering that, in many AMI implementation projects, implementers tend to cut corners and reuse some of the secrets across populations of the meters. And it of course means that getting access and the hold of the sensitive information stored in one meter gets you access to the populations, part of the population of the meters. So what to do about it? The LMS doesn't prescribe the key management approach and the secrets management approach and basically the method for that. Doesn't define like the certain requirements, but hence, in order to tackle that, you need to make sure that either you get a PKI architect on board in the project, early in the project, and include actually design in the key management approach in the scope of the AMI project, or you should choose your implementation partner, AMI vendor or smart meters vendor, based not only on, let's say, efficiency or technical parameters of the devices that they deliver, but also their experience in actually securing those meters. I know that this is kind of like the open-ended answer, but we know that there are smart meter vendors who have quite wide experience in defining architectures for managing keys and managing secrets for the large populations of the meters. This is the example of one of the architectures that we came across, designed by and promoted by Landis. Yeah, securing the network. Quite common pitfalls, inability to detect lateral movement from smart meters to HES. We basically advise it to be secured with installing IDS kind of solution between communication layer and HES directly on the router on the HES side of the communication. Introducing device fingerprinting, so to ensure that you have the ability to detect rogue devices connected to the subnets used for communication with the smart meters. We recommend introducing methods like fingerprinting, which enables you to detect that the device other than regular configuration of the smart meter has been connected to the network. And last but not least, introduce some kind of virtual point-to-point communication capability between smart meters and HES to reduce risk of pivoting from one meter to the population of the meters by like GRE or IPsec tunneling. Yeah. So the last one. We, in our experience working with the AMI project teams, we have identified that quite common occurrences that security requirements are either introduced late in the project or omitted totally, and basically at the time of procurement and actually go live for the let's say subpopulation of the smart meters. There's some discussion with the security about actually signing off the deployment, and this is quite often, and we have came across with two approaches represented by the CISOs. The one approach is kind of on the receiving end. So CISOs in the DSOs, they just mind their own business. When they are actually asked about opinion or asked to join the project team, they basically dedicate their team member to the project team, and they kind of act like in reactive approach. The other way is proactive approach. So to give you an example, when I spoke with one of the CISOs that I work with quite often, I was approached before the discussion. I was approached by the vendor, which is like OT heavy equipment vendor for the substations, and the vendor asked me whether I can join him in the discussions with the DSO about potential implementation of substation automation installation replacement. And when I contacted CISO for this company and asked whether he will be in the meeting that I was invited to, he was like, I don't even know about this project, this initiative. The fact is that it didn't stop him into appearing in the meeting. He basically asked himself and invited himself to the meeting and appeared anyway, and managed to basically, let's say, inject security requirements early in the initiative. So basically my conclusion about this is like being proactive and seeking for opportunities to act early in the advanced metering infrastructure implementation project from the security standpoint is always advisable and beneficial. Yeah, so that's it.